Good evening, greetings, and welcome. My name is Terry Roberts-Leonard, and I have the honor to serve as the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for Carmel Clay Schools. I am so thankful that you have chosen to spend part of your day with us as we continue our Courageous Conversations series. The Courageous Conversations series aims to inspire dialogue, community engagement, and civic education. Speakers will include scholars, community leaders, and diversity professionals whose scholarship, leadership, and advocacy enhance the school system's efforts to present diverse viewpoints, ideas, and perspectives to inspire greater understanding and appreciation for inclusive excellence. I am honored to be here today engaging in this important topic with our guest facilitator, Dr. Sara Colbum-Alsop. Dr. Colbum-Alsop earned her PhD from Indiana University in Bloomington. She has been with Franklin College since 2001. She is a fierce student and human rights advocate. We are glad she is able to be here with us this evening. Please mark your calendar for our next event on February 24th at 7 p.m., also on Zoom. This is when we will welcome Dr. Khalila Shabazz on the topic of reflecting on and anticipating the contributions of Indiana Black Americans. If you have questions during the event this evening, please feel free to utilize the Q&A feature here on Zoom, and she will get to as many questions as she can within our allotted time frame. She will also ask you to engage in the chat feature during our time together this evening. Again, thank you very much, and I will now turn the event over to Dr. Colbum-Alsop.
Thank you so much, Terry. I really appreciate the fact I feel honored that you've included me in the Courageous Conversations, and I'm really thankful for the people who are here on this cold evening. You could be watching Lester Holt and Wheel of Fortune, but you've made time to be here with us. I appreciate that. As Terry introduced, I am Dr. Sara Colbum-Alsop. I want to give you just a little bit of a rundown in terms of how this presentation will be structured. I do have a PowerPoint, but I kind of want to guide us quickly through what it will look like. It's a three-part presentation. The first part will be a bit about my own journey to understand race in this country. The second piece is to talk about how DEI initiatives are valuable at the secondary and even primary level prior to college, preparation for college. As I will be talking about this evening, having your child prepared for what will be a good experience and help them avoid unintended impacts. If they haven't had a lot of opportunity to see things from different angles, be with people with diverse identities, it could be a bit of a challenge. So I'm kind of going to show you the connection between what Carmel Clay and Terry are doing in DEI and how that can be really an impactful, positive experience by the time they get to college. My third part will be a case study of my own classroom. I will be talking about my freshman year seminar, and the topic is farm to table. And I will be talking about issues that show a diversity of perspectives and how that was received, most importantly, by the students. I know parents in the community in Indiana have expressed some fear about their child feeling attacked or made to feel guilty or fragile, etc. I will assure you, hopefully through what I show you and the results in terms of my report card that the students gave me, how that turned out. To get started, share my screen. So my title is it an advantage? Embracing DEI now and later, college. So if I can get not a show of hands because I can't see you, but if I can get in the chat, if anyone who is rearing children currently would like their child to go to college, can I just get a yes And then Terry, if you can just tell me how many yeses there are of people who are interested in their family members, their children, anyone that you are in an environment with where you're supporting them, you would like to see them go to college.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, they're pouring in. Some of them are going just to us and some of them are going where everybody can see it, but everybody has said yes so far.
Okay, so like the entire group, somebody,
Yes,
a lot of
everybody
people.
has
Okay.
said yes to this answered so far.
Awesome. Okay, so we will move forward then, because that's going to be an important piece to keep in mind if you are wanting your children, your grandchildren, your brothers, sisters, whoever in your life you're supporting and want to go into this track, that will be important to keep in mind. So Terry's already done the honors of introducing me. As she said, I started at Franklin College in 2001, so that I'm in my 25th year there. I want to share with you a little bit about my own personal journey to understanding race in this country. So just to give you an idea, I like Franklin College. I don't know how much you know about it. It is a very small liberal arts college. It is 80% white, and we have 20% BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color that identify that way. We are about just a little over 1,000 students. My own college was Ripon College, very similar, fairly conservative overall, predominantly white. So a lot of commonalities between my alma mater and the school I teach at. I was always taught, as a general rule, be kind. And I stand by that. I see signs in people's yards that say be kind, and on people's shirts that say be kind, and I agree with that. However, what I will say, what I have learned along the way is being kind isn't enough. It is not enough to move the needle forward in terms of equality for everyone. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. I also was never a bystander racist. By this term, I mean, if someone started to tell me a joke where I felt like it was going to hurt somebody's humanity, because that's the way I frame it, I shut them down. I was not the person who laughed. I was not I would shut them down immediately. And even in my travels, when I lived in Costa Rica, my Costa Rican family would start to tell a joke about something that was not going to be appropriate or anything I'd be comfortable with, and I'd cut them off. So those are good things, but I still had a long way to go on my journey. So traveling to other countries, I speak more than one language. I love engaging with other people from other cultures. I've learned so much. I've learned how to feel comfortable being uncomfortable, which I think is important, particularly as a white person. As we navigate this world, we do not navigate it in the same fashion as BIPOC. So we need to be aware of these things. I still had a long way to go in this journey though. So my PhD is in Spanish literature of the 17th century. So I've done extensive research in terms of colonialism, because of Spain, obviously, white supremacy, and the concept of racism. So I, started at Franklin when I was 30. And it wasn't until my 40s where I really realized I don't understand systemic racism. Like, I don't know what that is. So I made it a personal journey during my sabbatical to teach myself, educate myself. And I think that's very important that you as a white person take it upon yourself if you're going to do this. It's okay to ask people for book titles. It's okay, but it's not okay to ask somebody who is Black, who is Indigenous, or a person of color to teach you. So I did my own work. Clearly, I have lots of friends, and as I thought of things, I would reach out to them and ask them. But I did a lot. There's so many resources out there. There's no reason why you can't be doing the work. So I started then, and then it really became something that I wanted to share, wanted to educate other people on, wanted to incorporate more intentionally in my course, in my curriculum, and then just in general in my life. So several of you, from what I learned from the chat, are anticipating someone, a loved one, is going to go to college. So I want to share with you some very standard expectations at college. I'm going to use Franklin College as our model. That said, what I'm sharing with you is something that is consistently consistent expectations in all colleges and universities in this country. So the first thing to consider, and at Franklin we have this and many universities do as well, you will have courses, your student, your child will be required to take courses in diversity and internationalism. That will be in the liberal arts, if it's a liberal arts school, that core or general education. Almost all schools across the board have some sort of requirement, and it matches our mission, because our mission is at Franklin College to educate global citizens that are capable and successful in the world at large. Oops, a little bit of a hiccup here. Let me see what's going on. There it is. Every college, university has an Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity. This is an established, essential, active component on our campus, specifically because our goal is to make everybody feel, every student, every member of our community feel like they belong. That's a tall order, and it's not always going to be the case, but that is what our goal is. So it's very important that we have this office to work with not just Black, Indigenous, and people of color, but white kids as well. There's so much learning, and as you know from Carmel Clay, some of the things they're doing, it's an important way to make the campus and everyone feel welcome and included. In terms of the third point, students, and this is something you will see in every syllabus, this is required language. Students will be expected to respect all humans, no matter their race, color, creed, religion, sexual orientation, or gender. Organizations such as Pride, which for us is our LGBTQ organization. We have a Black student union. We have Latino multicultural clubs. We have living residents where if you speak Spanish and French, you can live there. We have the Bold House, which is where students of any color, but who are really interested in terms of race and diversity in our country can live. This is not a Franklin College thing. These are things that you will see across all campuses and universities. And last but not least, students will be expected to learn to think critically. This is an absolutely essential skill across all of the different career paths that a student might take, and to think critically and to be able to consider many points of view. Note, I say consider. I didn't say you have to adopt, but you are going to have to make room to accommodate and have the ability to at least consider other points of view. So what are consequences of attempting to shield our youth from learning about DEI initiatives or learning unadulterated American history? What are going to be some of those consequences? Well, at our campus and across campuses, it can be a detriment in terms of humans that don't realize that they're being insensitive to other humans. For example, overt racism, which is intentional, mean-spirited, the kind of ugly, no one wants to be called the racist, that kind of racism. And then there's more covert forms of racism that people who have not been informed in terms of DEI initiatives might get their feet stepped on, might not understand how they have hurt, how they have harmed somebody else's humanity. Often this is in the form of microaggressions. If this is a new word for you, a basic definition is our racial slights. So saying to an Asian student who's American, where are you from? And this student says, well, I'm American. I'm born and raised in the United States. No. Where are you really from? Okay, so it might be that that person who's saying that is very curious and wants to know, but the way they framed that already is troubling and could be harmful to the humanity of another person. Another example I will give is a Black student who graduated from Franklin. She was sharing as a guest speaker with my class that some of her sorority sisters, white sorority sisters, had gone to Florida for spring break, came back, they were tan, and they all wanted to compare their tans to her Black skin. Again, inappropriate, not intentionally malicious, but it was harmful. And it's those slights that add up that create real harm to other people. If your child is shielded beyond, hearing about, or you're trying to protect them, it could potentially create resistance to embracing new information and thinking critically. It may take them longer to step into these roles, but this is what we do at college. We are higher thinking. That is the idea, that we're not as interested in what you've always learned. We want you to hear more narratives so you can build on what you already know. It could be a detriment in terms of transitioning into the real world, where we know in the United States of America, we are living in a multicultural, pluralistic society. We want to graduate people who will be successful, who can work with lots of different people, who are very respectful of all different people. And it might make the task harder to learn to empathize. Can be a learned skill. Not all of us are born with a ton of empathy. A lot of times it takes the ability to human contact to understand things. But this could be made harder if we're constantly working on shielding them from things that we think will make them feel guilty or vulnerable. Number 5, the othering of diverse identities. We'll just put it that way. So I go back to number 1. The othering aspects, the microaggressions, the questions that we only ask of diverse identities, and we act like the white narrative is our default, can really lead to severe oppression, depression in our students of color, in our Black students, in our Native American students. And we are in the business of making sure that everyone feels welcome. And again, that the best learning will come when we all feel like we belong. And then my last comment, definitely not my last in terms of order. This is not an order of priority. It's really interesting. And I've taught a number of classes now, and I'm in my data, unscientific, just in my own classroom. When we start to share other narratives that are new to them, that are facts, I'm not in the business of indoctrinating, but are facts that they are new to them, new from a different perspective, I will take time to say, okay, this is sensitive material. Where is everybody right now? What are your reactions to what you're learning? By and large, there's always at least one hand in the air and then when I call on them, they say, why are we just learning this now? They're mad, they're disillusioned, and they feel like maybe they were missing, that they were being deceived in their previous education. And I will turn that question around and ask them to sit with that and come up with ideas about why that is. Why are we just having to learn this now? So standard college language in terms of diversity, I have a couple things here. The first one, I will allow you just to read that if you want, but it is a standard cut and paste that we are required to put in all of our syllabi. So please take a moment to go ahead and read through that, and then we'll move on. So our Center of Diversity and Inclusion is not just for diverse identities, it is for the entire campus. So if a student is feeling some kind of way because of the material and they're feeling like they need more counseling, more help, more assistance in processing things, first of all, I'm here, and I always tell them that as another white person in the classroom, please come to me and we can talk things out if you're struggling with it. Dr. Megan Polanay is our current director. She's another excellent resource. The Counseling Center on campus, and I use Franklin as an example, but again, every university, every college across this nation would have something like this in their handbook, in their syllabi, etc. And then I want to show you what happens, what can happen when we have unintended impact. That is, we have students, white students that are not well prepared to deal with diverse identities. And you can go ahead and read that on your own as well, and then we'll talk. So this piece I put in every syllabus, and we are supposed to, all of my colleagues do the same thing. And this is in the case where somebody has really harmed somebody else's humanity, and they can report it. And they literally can click, it will go to HR, it will go to administration, it will then be channeled, and the student will have to come talk to all the people on the committee that are involved in terms of the diversity piece and the misconduct, if there is such a thing, and decide in terms of what are going to be the repercussions. So it could be anything from it's a misunderstanding to you're going to get suspended for this to you're going to get expelled. So those are serious ramifications, and all of us want the best for our own kids. So thinking even in terms of that, I hope that this resonates with you and why it is important to have DEI at the secondary and primary levels as well. So as I stated at the beginning, my case study is going to be my freshman seminar. The students were given the option of topics and what they wanted to take. So they would have read about this, they possibly saw a clip about it, and I'm very transparent with what it was going to be. That said, I still think there were students who believed we were going to be talking just about carrots and cultivating potatoes. And I told them from the get-go, no, your investment is going to be much larger in terms of understanding the big picture. We started with the Omnivore's Dilemma, which is a fairly well-known resource written by Michael Pullen. He does excellent research. So we talked about the different styles of farming. We talked about the industrial farming. We talked about organic farming. We talked about sustainable farming, and we talked a little bit about foraging. And so that book was actually, it's a young adult reader. I start with that because as new freshmen, we need to sort of work on basic skills like annotation, reading, that sort of thing. So it was a very first easy read to start with, probably what they really thought the whole course was going to be. We also read Animal Vegetable Miracle, A Year of Food Life. You may be familiar with Barbara Kingsolver. She is a well-known writer, does a lot of fiction, but in this case, this is actually her family memoir. She and her family moved from Arizona to Virginia. They have a piece of land there in a home. It's a small rustic home, but they have a home there. And they decide to write this book together as a family. And the goal of the whole year together is to eat only locally sustainable foods. So they can't have anything else. I think they get to pick random things. I think they pick coffee and a few other spices, maybe, I don't even remember, oil, something like that. But by and large, they had to eat everything locally sourced the entire year. So it's an excellent read, lots of fun. I highly recommend it. The source in the middle is a great documentary. I love film, and it is in my top 5 favorite films of all time. The students adored it. They love it. And it is actually available. You can get it on Hulu. It was going to be on Netflix, but there's some breakdown. So anyway, it's on Hulu if you wish to watch it. Very inspirational. It is about a couple and their dog who move out of I think they're in Los Angeles, but they move out to a farm in California, and they create this sustainable farm. And it's from the beginning to the ending of their experience. It's a beautiful film. Love it. So this page, what I just shared with you, is what I think they thought the entire course was going to be. Now, what I want you to do now is, without much thought, I really want it to be more of a what is the word I'm looking for? Just where you don't think about, I can't think of the word, where you don't think about it, but you tell me when you think farmer, what's their race? What do you associate with it? What's their gender? What, maybe even what's their religion? What's their age? So if you don't mind, I'd love you to participate and share in the chat what you think a farmer is. And I'm going to give you 2 minutes, no longer. And you tell me from your point of view, what is a farmer?
Okay, we have people saying white male Christian in their 50s. Somebody agree with that. Somebody said male 40s, Catholic, white male Christian 50, farmer conservative, white conservative views, white male Christian 60 is what we have so far.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Exactly what I was guessing you would say. And the average age of a farmer in the United States right now is 56. So that's an interesting, some of you were right on the mark with that. So yes, I agree. When we think just like off the top, we're going to think white, we're going to think male, we're going to think Christian, or even more specific, maybe Catholic, and then the age, middle-ish, right, age. So I agree with all those answers. So my next question is, and I would like you guys to type up some thoughts on this. Why is this? Where is the basis of this information coming from? So few people, if you want to share, I'd love to hear some ideas from you. Why is this? Why do we all have this image in our mind? And then Terry, when you see some things you can share out with me.
Someone said television ads. Somebody said they grew up in a farm town and that's what they saw. In textbooks, film, and books. Lassie. I'm from Indiana. Who doesn't know a farmer?
Very good. Very good. And I would say that's on the mark. Our own environment, our own background, right? Family, what our community looks like, media, how images are generated. Yeah, so that is correct. So my next question is, and I am again asking the participants their thoughts on this, what might be the broader consequences of viewing farmers from this point of view only? Again, take some participants to think about that and give me some solid answers as you've done so far.
Somebody said we could be wrong.
We could be wrong. Okay.
Inaccurate.
Inaccurate.
It's not accurate, but it's a characterization, someone said.
Okay. I think those are good. I think those are excellent. Okay. So that brings us to our next point, which is implicit or unconscious bias. All of us of all races have unconscious biases. It's not a white thing, it's an everybody thing. You can say it's discrimination, it's prejudice, it's implicit bias. We all have those things. And they've, according to this here, they say there's over 150 types of biases, right? What is that? It's our inherent instinct to categorize people and things without being aware of it. So just by seeing me tonight, you might have already decided X, Y, and Z in terms of implicit biases, right? But the truth of the matter is, as you pointed out, we might be wrong. It could be flawed thinking based on these preconceived notions, right? So what is our job? And this is what I do with the students. I'm literally walking you through what I do with my students. So what are we going to do with these, right? We're always going to have them, but how can we continually work to get it right, if you will? So first of all, we're doing it. We're reading about it, we're watching films, we're listening to voices that aren't our own. We're hearing from people who come from different backgrounds, different walks of life, and you're starting to recognize, wow, okay, this isn't exactly what I thought. I might have to reconsider my notions, right? The second piece is to think critically. It's not a coin. There aren't two sides. We're talking about a diamond. It's a multifaceted piece. So with each issue, the more faces you have, the more informed you can be in terms of how you respond to something. And last but not least, being willing to challenge your assumptions and traditions. And think about, I'm not saying you assume those, but thinking about a contrary view, having the opportunity to take contrary views, even if they're not your own, just to step inside the shoes and try to empathize from a different angle than what you have in your previously to this. All right, so some of you may be familiar with Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I hope I said her name correctly. I've done the best I could with the pronunciation. She is amazing. She is a writer from Nigeria, and she has a TED Talk. It's about 19 minutes long. We're going to listen to the first 3 minutes, and I hope I can set this up correctly with you guys. Let me see here. Should be able to fairly seamlessly do this. Terry, if you see it's not like you're not hearing anything or whatever, any of that, break in and let me know. Hopefully we'll get it. Can everyone see my screen currently? With the remote?
Yes, we can see it on there. Make sure you
Okay.
click share sound at the top.
Share sound at the top.
In the
Oh, I did the optimal thing. Wait, so let me see if you can. I'm going to mute myself, but do I need to do something else?
don't mute yourself because it'll mute and you won't be able to hear it. Hit play and let's see if it.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear it.
Perfect.
I'm a storyteller, and I would like to tell you a few personal stories about what I like to call the danger of the single story. I grew up on a university campus in eastern Nigeria. My mother says that I started reading at the age of 2, although I think 4 is probably close to the truth. So I was an early reader, and what I read were British and American children's books. I was also an early writer. And when I began to write at about the age of 7, stories in pencil with crayon illustrations that my poor mother was obligated to read, I wrote exactly the kinds of stories I was reading. All my characters were white and blue-eyed. They played in the snow. They ate apples. And they talked a lot about the weather, how lovely it was that the sun had come out. Now, this despite the fact that I lived in Nigeria. I had never been outside Nigeria. We didn't have snow. We ate mangoes. And we never talked about the weather because there was no need to. My characters also drank a lot of ginger beer because the characters in the British books I read drank ginger beer. Never mind that I had no idea what ginger beer was. And for many years afterwards, I would have a desperate desire to taste ginger beer. But that is another story. What this demonstrates, I think, is how impressionable and vulnerable we are in the face of a story, particularly as children. Because all I had read were books in which characters were foreign, I had become convinced that books, by their very nature, had to have foreigners in them and had to be about things with which I could not personally identify. Now, things changed when I discovered African books. There weren't many of them available, and they weren't quite as easy to find as the foreign books, but because of writers like Chinua Achebe and Kamaralaye, I went through a mental shift in my perception of literature. I realized that people like me, girls with skin the color of chocolate, whose kinky hair could not form ponytails, could also exist in literature. I started to write about things I recognized. Now, I loved those American and British books I read They stirred my imagination. They opened up new worlds for me. But the unintended consequence was that I did not know that people like me could exist in literature. So what the discovery of African writers did for me was this. It saved me from having a single story of what books are. I come from a conventional middle-class Nigerian family. My father was a professor. My mother was an administrator. And so we had
Okay. Terry, can you see the danger of the, can you see my PowerPoint now or no?
No, it's just black screen.
Okay, hang on. How about now?
Yes, it's back.
Okay, very good. So you could listen to the whole thing. It's 19 minutes long, but for the sake of this presentation, I wanted to share those first 3 minutes because they're very impactful. What she says is true. She loved British books. So we're not saying we throw that piece out, but we're making room for more stories so that people across the board feel represented, and that's important. So one of the things, and I do this in every single class, and I tell students, this is not just for my class, this is for every class you ever take. When you are reading, ask these questions. Whose stories are being told? Who are the narrators of these stories? Whose perspectives are being centered? Whose voices are being left out? Which identities are being betrayed as the heroes? Ask yourself these questions every time. Let's see here. So important points to consider in terms of all of this that we're talking about. To recap, everyone has implicit biases, everyone. And as we talked about in terms of how we see the farmer in that specific image, we've all been conditioned to see the world in a certain way based on our personal experiences and belief systems. When presented with new facts and information that don't fit into our frame of reference, it might make us feel defensive, uncomfortable, anxious, angry, guilty. I tell the students, this is normal. And then what I tell them is, and this is, it's from a Twitter account. I wasn't sure. I Googled to find out if there was anybody before who had said this, and I couldn't find it, although I feel like I've seen a lot of memes that say this, but I'm going to credit Librarian Shipwreck from Twitter. And the saying goes, studying history will sometimes disturb you. Studying history will sometimes upset you. Studying history will sometimes make you furious. If studying history always makes you feel proud and happy, you probably aren't studying history. And that's something that we need to think about and take seriously. I have a friend who's currently in Germany. He's getting his degree. And he posted on Facebook just yesterday, and I lifted some of his words. And we all know about Germany. We all know about Nazism. And what he says in terms of the education he's getting there, he says, I will tell you that they own the atrocities that were committed under their name. They teach their students at an early age about the horrors committed against the Jewish people and others considered quote unquote undesirables. And they teach them about the cowardice of those Germans who chose to remain silent while their neighbors were enslaved and murdered. Why do they teach it? Is his question. So that it never happens again. And then he says, I hope things change in our country, meaning the United States. I really do. And I really appreciated that, especially in light of presenting this information to you. So once you recover from your initial shock, I will ask you to attempt to accommodate this piece of information into your own reference. And appreciate does not mean you have to reject everything else, right? It's making room for other points of view, other voices, other ways of viewing the same issue. You may challenge your old assumptions and see all issues as multidimensional. To inform yourself is frankly very empowering, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I won't go on too long here. I will focus primarily, these are many of the sources I use. So the second part of the semester is where we really dig into farming from other different perspectives, aside from our implicit biases about the white male Christian 55-year-old guy, okay? Because there are reasons that we need to look at all the pieces. I'm going to share with you specifically, I don't know if you've seen this, but I highly recommend it. It's a series by CNN called United Shades of America. I don't know what his piece in terms of the production, but he leads all the conversations and the narratives, the perspectives. His name is Kamau Bell. We will see, I say see in between parentheses, because I own the rights to the episode on Black farming. However, I realized today that because there's must be a copyright law, you won't be able to see it, but you'll be able to hear the interview. And the interview takes place between Kamau Bell and two other farmers that are Black. He also, in the episode, which is why I encourage you to go beyond today and hearing the little piece that I share with you and watch the whole episode, because he is also very careful to embrace and include white farmers, all kinds of diverse identities that are farming within the episode. The other pieces are, I just show you so that you know, as a white educator, I'm not going to sit up in front of the class like I'm doing right now and just talk at you and expect you to understand things. I need to decenter myself when I'm teaching and let these voices, these diverse identities, speak to the issues that affect them directly in terms of things. So when we look at Black farming, interestingly enough, at the turn of the century, 14% of the farms were owned by Black people, Black community, Black folks. That would have been about 1 million Black farmers at that time. Here we are in 2022, and we have 1.3% only. And it has to be a reason for this, right? And we have to uncover the why. So I'm going to tell you that this little piece that we're going to see, like I said, is between Kamau Bell and two farmers that he's interviewing. And like I said, treat it more like a podcast, I guess, so that you can actually, treat it more like a podcast so that you can, hold up, follow where we're going with it. Here it is. Okay. And maybe, just maybe, who knows, miraculously you'll get to see it too, but don't count on it. Terry, can you let me know if you see the YouTube piece?
I see it on the screen.
Okay, so again, I'm hoping you'll be able to see the picture, but I think it's gonna go black. So just focus on the voices, but you can see here's Kamau, and here are the two Black farmers he is speaking to.
Over here, that guy's farm is all cleared out. Right. Perfect, and it looks like a photograph of a farm.
Right.
And it seems like they don't have a problem clearing the trees over there.
They can grow 400 round bales a year, and I can't even grow 50 bales.
And George, my cow eats the same amount of hay as the white man. That's it. For people who don't understand this.
John Boyd Jr. is a fourth-generation Virginia farmer, the founder of the National Black Farmers Union, and the 2019 champion of the Looking Cool in the Cowboy Hat contest. Ultimately, this is all the same land, but the bank sees that as a good investment, but the bank does not see this as the same level of good investment.
Right.
And I mean, just to be clear, are there any independent farmers who aren't operating without help from the bank or loans? Or
No.
It seems like that's a part of the business.
Any farmer.
Yeah.
Blue, black, psychedelic, green, or brown. You need a farm operating loan to operate.
Yeah.
Every year. And then you sell your livestock and you pay it off and you do it again next year. And I'm gonna say it, farming is a white man's game. And the top 10 banks in the United States, they're guilty by not lending money to Black farmers the way that they lend it to white farmers.
That's true.
Between 1910 and 1997, Black farmers lost about 90% of the land that they owned, whereas white farmers lost about 2%. And no, it wasn't because white farmers were 88% better at farming. Internal studies at the USDA found that the USDA authorities had routinely discriminated against African-American farmers.
The government, who done treated us worse than the dirt on the ground we're sitting on, investigated this up in my local county office. It took 387 days to process a black farmer's loan application.
387 days.
387 days on average.
So you miss a whole
year
of planting.
Bingo.
And how long does it take to process a white farmer?
30 days.
30?
Less than 30 days. That's where the problem is. And if I can't get it there, I can't get it anywhere.
That's it.
That's it.
That's the United States Department of Agriculture, the last plantation. And they haven't changed, you know, even after the national lawsuit.
In 1997, Timothy Pigford and 400 other African-American farmers sued the USDA for systemic discrimination against black farmers. The farmers won, but the payout took 11 years and required ongoing litigation.
It was merely an apology and an acknowledgement of guilt by the United States Department of Agriculture. And my grandfather, Thomas Boyd, used
Terry, can you see this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, excellent. So could you see anything on the screen or just hear it?
No, just hear it.
Okay, so could you hear it well enough to follow it?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is the why. We learn facts. These are not, you know, these are data-driven facts. These are things that are actually happening. And we have to acknowledge the why there are so few Black farmers. And what are the challenges? The challenges is that presented here were the amount of time it takes to get a loan process for a Black farmer versus a white farmer. That alone, land equity. USDA has acknowledged there was litigation, there was a case. So these are things we need to really think about. And this meme up here, I like it because it's very intentional in terms of how it portrays things. So you have the white man and you have the Black woman. And I always say to my students, listen, I know that you worked hard to get where you are, okay? Nobody's debating that. I know that you probably have had things, obstacles in your course as well, but you know what? One of them wasn't your skin color. When you are Black in America, you are gonna constantly, it doesn't matter if it's in farming, it's obviously in other areas. So I like this because it portrays the obstacles, the many pieces that create a very lopsided playing field. So at this point, we have a few more minutes and I want to allow a little time for questions, reactions, but I want to make sure that you understand that how my classes have been managed have empowered student learning, which is why I bring the student's report card of me to you directly here. The evaluation report you see was just from last semester. The five is the highest that you can get in terms of the median you see there, and you can see my averages. The SA means strongly agree, the A means agree, the N means neutral, D means disagree, SD means strongly disagree. And let me be clear, in my class, I had all white students except for one person who identifies as Native American, who by her own acknowledgement says, I am white passing. So the students in the class probably weren't even aware until her presentation that she was Native American. But that said, you can see from my results that it wasn't about feeling attacked. It wasn't about them feeling fragile. I didn't make them feel like bad people. We did a lot of good learning. And so to take a look at some of these, developed a greater appreciation for the subject, always an outlier. There's always a hater. Probably wasn't related to anything about that. Probably mad at me about a grade. I don't know. But generally speaking, strongly agree and agree are where the numbers fall. This course has broadened my understanding of people from different cultural and ethnic backgrounds. All agreed, strongly or agreed. The course helped me become more receptive to other points of view. All agreed. This instructor is receptive to questions and discussions concerning multiculturalism, ethnicity. Again, agreed. This instructor takes into consideration ethnic and cultural differences. So the numbers speak for themselves. What I strive for them is to let them know by learning this information, you're already doing the work. Know better, do better. That's it. They're almost all of them are traditional college age. So some of them are voting for the first time. This is giving them a wider understanding of how they might consider voting when they go to the polls, improving their critical thinking, not just for this class, in general. And once they understand, wow, I didn't know anything about farming except for the default narrative, what else don't I know? And it piques their intellectual curiosity. And then I'll leave you with some of these are the comments. They don't have to write comments, but I appreciate their comments. And I want to say, even in the improvement category, this is the best complaint I've ever got. I wish we could have stayed on the Native American and Black foods topics for longer and explored them more. Best complaint I've ever had. That's wonderful. This has been a well put together class. I enjoyed each topic, and I like that we learn from multiple types of sources. She does not take crap, 100% true, and is very respectful of all cultures. I love that they said all cultures, because I'm not about to diss the white piece either. I want you to see everything. And interesting and new information I've never learned before. So I'm going to stop talking at you. And if you have takeaway reflections, comments, or reactions, questions, go ahead at this point and put them in the chat. And I will stop sharing this so you can see my face. So if anyone has questions, just general comments, reactions, I am open to any of your ideas.
We had somebody in the chat that agreed with what you were saying about Germany. She said she was from Germany.
Oh,
She made
interesting.
that
Okay.
comment.
Awesome.
We have a question of how do you get parents to understand the importance of teaching history in its entirety?
I think I'm doing it sort of invertedly. I think I'm teaching their kids. And then, for example, when we did the Native American food sovereignty, I said, I challenge you to go home, because I know you're still going to do Thanksgiving. It's a tradition in American culture. And if you're not Native American, you probably celebrate it. If you are Native American, you consider it the worst thing in the world. It was their apocalypse. I understand that. You should be sensitive to that too. I would like you to go home and just do trivia. Ask your family about Native foods, because we learned all kinds of foods that we take for granted that their origins were Native American. So I sort of flipped the script, because I don't, as a college professor, I don't have a ton of contact with parents, with my own kids. When they're telling me about what they're learning, I will question them and ask them things. And I think that that's like a good practice, just to say, what are you learning? And for example, my son this morning, he had a poem he had to read, because they're doing it's for articulation and pronunciation. And it talked about how Columbus was discovered, and they used that word. And so after he had read it, I said, does anything in this poem stand out to you? And he said, oh, you mean the fact that they said Columbus discovered? I said, yeah. I said, what perspective? Who's that? Who discovered? And he said, well, I would say that was the Europeans, because the Native Americans were already there. They weren't just, and I said, that's it. So I just kind of help continually building on that dialogue. I don't know if that answers your question, but thank you. Yeah, I know it's hard. It's hard. I'm sure I'm speaking to the choir here. Here's what I will say about that though. The youth, my students, are very receptive to different kinds of learning. Their parents, perhaps not, but they themselves really feel empowered by more knowledge and understanding from other perspectives. So it's unfortunate that we can't reach everyone, but I agree with you.
I will add that this recording will be on the Carmel Clay Schools DEI website. So if you have someone you would like to share the message with, you can direct them to the website next week.
Awesome. Thank you. Anything else? if that's the end of questions, I just want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your evening to listen to me. And hopefully I've given you some of my thoughts. And I appreciate all of you so much. Really was a pleasure. And thank you, Terry, so much for including me in the Courageous Conversations.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much to Dr. Sara Colbum-Alsop for joining us this evening. Thank you to all of the attendees. Shout out to the Franklin College attendees I see on the list.
A lot of my colleagues, bless your heart. Thank you for being here.
Again, please remember to mark your calendar for February the 24th at 7 p.m. when we will welcome Dr. Khalila Shabazz on the topic of reflecting on and anticipating the contributions of Indiana Black Americans. As all Courageous Conversations events they are free and open to the public. All the ones on Zoom will be recorded and will be shared on the Carmel Clay Schools website for people to download and view on their time. Thank you very much and have a great evening.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.